The decision whether to desex your new dog, whether it's a male or a female, can be really difficult. There's so many things that you have to think about. Not only that, there's always so much confusing information out there, whether it's opinions from your friends, whether it's opinions of veterinarians. It can be a difficult decision, that's for sure. So in this video, I want to walk you through the pros and cons of whether to desex your dog. And we can talking about either males or females, it doesn't matter. But before we go too much further, I just wanted to say that I will have a video coming out next week that is going to be discussing on when the right age is to desex your dog. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that little notification bell, because then you'll be given a notification as to when that video launches, and it should be next week. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Leigh from Your Vet Online, where we provide animal owners just like you with 24/7 access to veterinarians. So it doesn't matter whether you've got a cat, a horse, a dog, a pocket pet, we're always available to help you with any animal health question. Just head on over to yourvetonline.com to book your consult when you need us. Now let's just talk about some of the terminology here. It's just so that we're all on the same wavelength. So when we talk about desexing or neutering, it's basically the same thing. It means removal of the sex organs. In the female, we're generally removing both the ovaries and the uterus, and that's known as being spayed or spaying. And in the male, we're removing the testicles, and that's known as either neutering or castration. A dog that still has its sex organs, so it's still got its ovaries and uterus, or still has its testicles, is called either intact or an entire. So if you're not planning on breeding your dog, desexing can actually provide a multitude of benefits. There's no question that globally we have an overpopulation of dogs, and sadly that means that when they enter pounds and shelters, not all of them can be rehomed, and many do need to be euthanized. Neutering your dog is one way to guarantee that no matter what happens, we're not going to be producing any unwanted litters of pups from that dog. You really do have to ask yourself, is it really fair to produce pups that might actually never have a home? And on the subject of pounds and shelters, it makes perfect sense for them to spay or neuter any dog that they are going to rehome. And that just removes that very real risk of those dogs potentially exacerbating the problem by breeding. I do hate to say it, but remember, this is not a dog problem, it's actually a people problem. And sadly, we can't be certain that everyone is going to be responsible and make sure that their dog is not producing unwanted litters. In reality, the only people that really should be breeding any dogs are those that are qualified, responsible and ethical breeders. We want to try and avoid people using backyard breeders to purchase their dogs from. You can assist by not only neutering your dog, but you can also support these breeders by not purchasing any future dogs from backyard breeders. From a health perspective, there are a number of benefits for both sexes by neutering them, and just as there are some negatives. So we're going to check out what those are right in this video. Just remember, I'm talking about general benefits, but I do want you to check out that video related to the timing of when you desex your dog, as that has specifics related to breed and sex for different animals. And it's always a great idea to get extra advice about your particular situation from a veterinarian. So let's start with females. We know that if we desex a female before she has her first puberty or first heat, then we drastically reduce the risk of mammary cancer. Mammary cancer actually composes about 50% of the total canine neoplasia out there. So it's a big factor to consider. there is a tiny risk of 0.05% risk of getting mammary cancer if you spay your dog before their first heat. But if we wait and we spay between their first and second heat, that actually increases up to 8%. And if we spay after their third heat, it increases again to over 25%, with having the risk of getting mammary cancer at some stage during their lifetime. But is mammary cancer actually that bad? We've got to remember 50% is actually benign and 50% is malignant. And of that 50% that are malignant, 50% of those can actually be cured by surgery alone. So we've got to remember that 75% of all mammary cancer is either cured by surgery and early detection. That's not a bad stat. The other big health benefit for females is if there's no uterus, then there's no chance of them getting Pyometra. Pyometra is actually an infection of the uterus, and it's one of the leading causes of death and, well, life-threatening conditions for bitches that haven't been spayed. I've seen so many cases of this, and it can be really heartbreaking. The other health condition that desexing a female dog will prevent is those false pregnancies. So often a bitch will be on heat, and then a good sort of 30 to 40 days after that heat period, she'll actually start to increase the size of her mammary glands, and in some cases produce a milk-like substance. And this is a case of a false pregnancy. Sometimes with a false pregnancy, that extra swelling of the mammary glands, as well as the liquid that it produces, can actually result in mastitis. And mastitis is a condition that you will need to seek veterinary attention for, and it can be extremely painful, and in some circumstances, again, can lead to a life-threatening condition such as septicemia, which could potentially kill your bitch. Just remember, pregnancy is risky. So while the vast majority of dogs have their puppies with absolutely no issues at all, some dogs really do struggle. And in those situations, if you don't notice that they are struggling and you leave it too late, again, it can cause death. And even if you do notice, it may be a situation where we actually have to get them to the emergency veterinarian, and they will have to perform either a cesarean, or if we're really lucky, they might be able to manually try and remove a puppy that might be just a little bit stuck, or use some medications like oxytocin to help that puppy get pushed through that birth canal. But all in all, I just want you to remember that pregnancy is not risk-free. And that's just the birth process. Pregnancy can also cause problems with the metabolic system. So sometimes dogs might get milk fever after they've had the pups. It can also, as I said, have problems with mastitis. They often have issues with nutrition. So it's not the easiest thing in the world to actually do with your dog if you're not an experienced breeder. Okay, let's talk about males for a little bit. If there's no testosterone, then we're not going to have things like prostatic enlargement, perineal hernias, testicular and perianal tumours. All those things are absolutely eliminated. So that's a good thing. In male dogs, desexing actually significantly reduces the risk of prostate problems such as an enlarged prostate, prostatic cysts, and prostatitis. We actually do know that it doesn't quite reduce the risk of prostate cancer, and which we know is quite rare in dogs and carries a really poor prognosis, but we know the sex stuff is not related necessarily to that. We do know that if we desex male dogs, that we will reduce the risk of testicular cancer. Even though we know testicular cancer has a reasonably high treatment success rate, we actually do need to castrate as part of that treatment program. Okay, let's have a little chat about behaviours. So in males, we know that desexing can possibly reduce sex-exacerbated aggression. So that means that the male dogs are less likely to fight other male dogs or other dogs in the household and the neighbourhood. We've got to also remember that desex animals are less likely to roam. We all know, the roaming male, because he's trying to find the in-heat females. So if there's less roaming, there's less chance of being traumatically hit, say, by a car. There's less risk of fighting when they meet other male dogs. And also there's less risk of them being exposed to disease as they're wandering about. Territorial marking is one of those things that reduces dramatically if you spay or neuter a dog before they reach puberty. So that's when they're doing that urine marking to basically mark their territory. Some other bonuses are that when you actually spay or neuter your dog, you actually pay less in council registration. And that's a good thing. Yay! I think you have to agree, that's a nice bonus. So what are some of the cons regarding desexing? I guess one of the big ones is with a female dog. The heat that a female dog has can be really, really messy. She bleeds, and she can bleed for a good week or so. And that can be really, really messy, and it can cause damage to your property, your carpet, your floorings, that sort of thing. It's also really hard to keep a female away from other dogs. You can't just leave her in the backyard and hope for the best. Male dogs, well, intact male dogs, try really, really, really hard to get to a female. So you need to be really vigilant. You actually have to lock them away so that intact dogs can't have any access. So no cages, because of course they can do it through the cage gaps, like the gaps in the cage, they can do it through there. And I have seen that being done. I've also seen dogs jump over huge gates. So don't think that your 6-foot fence is going to help either. And also I actually had a dog who we had in a stable and we thought that we'd keep the upper door open. That was no good either. She got pregnant too, so bad owners. Some of the other things that you might see when your bitch is in heat is she can be really restless. She can hump a lot, all that humping behaviour, and that can be quite annoying. Some bitches can also turn a little bit aggressive. Now that's not every dog, and I don't want to say that bitches in heat are going to be aggressive. It's very individual, but it is something that could potentially happen. And these bitches will try and seek out other male dogs, and that can be frustrating too. And she won't like other females around her, so just remember that one. All in all, desexing your dog is a really responsible thing to do, and it's one that the vast majority of vets do recommend. But as I said, watch our next video where we discuss when the best age is to desex your dog, because there's been some studies that show that certain breeds and certain sexes, it is actually more appropriate to desex them at a certain age, so that the susceptibility to cancers and certain bone diseases aren't as high. Alright then guys, if you liked this video, make sure you give us the thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and we'll catch you next time. I'm Dr. Leigh.